I thought I could bury the secret. I thought one night wouldn't matter. But when that second pink line appeared, my entire world cracked open. My husband was making breakfast when I walked out of the bathroom, pregnant, shaking, and unable to breathe. And the worst part? I didn't even know if the baby was his. This is not a story I'm proud to tell, but it's one that others need to hear. Hi friends, before we dive deep into this dramatic life story, I want to thank my subscribers for always supporting this channel. If you're new here, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. These real stories of love, betrayal, and truth are meant to move you, shake you, and make you think. Let's get into my story. They say temptation comes softly, like a whisper. But for me, it came like thunder, loud, shocking, and impossible to ignore. My name is Lauren Mitchell, and I live in a quiet neighborhood just outside of Charleston, South Carolina. I'm 36, a wife of 12 years, and a mother of 2. To anyone looking in, I had it all: a stable marriage, beautiful children, and a house that smelled like fresh linen and homemade pot roast. But what people don't see is how loneliness can live even in the brightest, cleanest corners of your life. My husband, Ethan, is a good man. He's the type that schedules us time on the calendar and always brings home the groceries. He folds the laundry, packs school lunches, and even lights candles in our bedroom on Friday nights. But lately it all started to feel choreographed, like we were just going through the motions, smiling, nodding, pretending everything was fine. The truth? I hadn't felt truly desired in years. I know how that sounds: spoiled, selfish. But I need to be honest, because this story doesn't deserve sugarcoating. Ethan did everything right, and somehow that made it worse. He kissed me the same way he kissed our kids' foreheads: warm, careful, predictable. Our Friday night sex was quiet, polite, and over in 10 minutes. I used to fake it. Eventually, I didn't bother. It was a Thursday evening when it happened. Ethan was out of town for a work seminar in Atlanta. The kids were spending the night at their grandparents'. The house was quiet, too quiet. I opened a bottle of wine and let the silence wrap around me like a blanket. I scrolled my phone, thumb hovering over a message I never should have opened. His name was Ryan. We met once before, months ago, at a birthday party for a mutual friend. He was a little younger than me. Tall. Confident. The kind of man who looks you dead in the eyes when he speaks and somehow makes you forget your own name. We'd exchanged numbers then. Just friendly, I told myself. Just in case. But that night, something cracked. I don't remember exactly what we texted. Just that within the hour, he was at my front door. I opened it without thinking. He stood there in a leather jacket, the smell of cologne and cold air clinging to him. We didn't speak. Not right away. He looked at me like I was something new, something worth breaking rules for. We didn't go to the bedroom. We didn't even make it past the kitchen counter. It was reckless. Raw. Unlike anything I'd felt in years. There were no lights. No soft words. Just hands, lips, skin. I remember gripping the edge of the granite counter, breathless, ashamed of how badly I wanted it. How I didn't care. Afterward, we didn't talk much. He left like a thief in the night, and I stood in the hallway, half-dressed and shaking. I washed the sheets, even though we never touched the bed. I scrubbed the counters, the sink, the mirror, trying to erase any trace of him, of what I did. But guilt doesn't wash off. It stains your soul. Ethan came home the next day. He kissed my cheek, unpacked his suitcase, and told me how much he missed the kids. I smiled and nodded, forcing back tears. Every time he touched me, it felt like glass under skin. But I told myself it was over. One night, one mistake, until the test turned positive. It had been 2 weeks. 14 slow-moving, soul-splitting days since I let Ryan touch me, taste me, and leave without looking back. I told myself I had moved on, that I had buried the memory in a box so deep inside my heart it would never resurface. But I was wrong, because every time Ethan kissed me, I felt it, the lie sitting between us like a ticking bomb. We sat at the breakfast table like always. Ethan, sipping his black coffee and reading the news on his tablet. Me, staring at my toast, the smell of it making my stomach churn. I wasn't sure if it was the guilt or something else. "You okay, babe? You look pale," he asked without looking up.
Yeah, elite.
Didn't sleep well. He reached across the table and gave my hand a soft squeeze. "Try to rest more. You work too hard." If only he knew. That afternoon, I stopped at the pharmacy. The thought had been creeping in my mind for days. My body felt off, the kind of off that whispers quietly, then starts to scream. My period was late. Just a couple of days, I told myself. It could be stress, hormones, anything. But my gut knew better. I stared at the test for a long time before I bought it. I felt like a criminal standing in that aisle. Like someone would recognize me and call out my sin. I hid it under a pack of razors and a magazine, paid in cash, and left without making eye contact. I waited until midnight to take it. Ethan was asleep, breathing softly beside me. I crept to the bathroom, turned on the dim light, and locked the door. 3 minutes. That's all it took to shatter my entire life. 2 pink lines. I dropped to my knees on the cold tile floor. My breath caught in my throat. My heart hammered so loudly, I thought it might wake the whole neighborhood. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I couldn't. I clutched the test in my hand and curled into myself. Everything around me blurred. I tried to count the weeks in my head, tried to convince myself it might be Ethan's. But the numbers didn't lie. The night with Ryan lined up too perfectly. I didn't sleep that night. I lay beside my husband in silence, my mind unraveling like a ball of yarn tumbling down a staircase. Every breath he took, every innocent snore, stabbed me deeper. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went to church. Not because I was looking for forgiveness, but because I was desperate to sit somewhere quiet, where no one would ask me questions. I sat in the back pew, stared at the stained glass, and let the tears fall without shame. I wasn't just pregnant. I was pregnant by a man whose last name I didn't even know. The thought made me sick. That night, I cooked dinner. Meatloaf, Ethan's favorite. I tried to act normal, tried to laugh at his work stories and help the kids with their homework. But the second I kissed Ethan goodnight and turned off the bedroom light, I cried into my pillow. How was I going to tell him? Worse, how was I going to live with myself if I didn't? Chapter 3. When silence feels like screaming, you can't hear a heartbeat when your own is thundering in your ears. That's what I remember thinking the morning I took the test. The bathroom was quiet, sunlight slipping in through the frosted window, catching the edges of the countertop like it was mocking me, trying to make something beautiful out of something broken. The second line appeared almost instantly. I stared at it, my mouth open, but no sound came out. It felt like the world shrunk, like the floor pulled away from my feet. I didn't cry. I couldn't. Shock is silent. Guilt is suffocating. And I was drowning in both. I hadn't even looked David in the eye in 3 days. Let me take a step back. My name is Emma Caldwell. I'm 32, and I've been married to David for nearly 9 years. He's a mechanical engineer, quiet, focused, steady. The kind of man who folds laundry better than I do, who reads manuals for fun, and who once drove 6 hours to pick up my favorite cake for my birthday. He is the kind of man who deserves truth. And I'm the woman who betrayed him. That one night, it started with wine, with distance, with a stranger who said everything I hadn't heard in months. I didn't think it would matter. I told myself it was just one mistake. But now, my mistake was growing inside me. David knew something was wrong. He was never the jealous type, but he was intuitive. After I stopped talking, stopped meeting his eyes, stopped sleeping soundly, he grew quieter too. He didn't confront me. He didn't ask questions. Instead, he made me pancakes that Sunday morning, heart-shaped ones, like he used to when we were newlyweds. He smiled when I sat down at the table, but his eyes, they were searching, watching, waiting. And I felt like a criminal pretending to be someone good. The silence between us wasn't peaceful. It was screaming. That night, I tried to act normal. We watched a movie. I curled up next to him on the couch. His hand slipped into mine, and I wanted to confess. I wanted to scream. I'm sorry. I messed up. I didn't mean for it to go this far. But my lips wouldn't move. Instead, I just stared at his profile in the flickering light, remembering all the quiet ways he loved me, the steady, loyal, unflashy ways. And I wondered how I ever convinced myself that wasn't enough. The worst part? I didn't even know who the father was. And that uncertainty, that unbearable, horrifying question, it began to eat at my insides faster than any nausea ever could. I found myself Googling clinics, reading about early paternity tests, even considering lies I could tell to cover the timeline. But every route I imagined ended the same way, with David looking at me like a stranger. A few nights later, David said something that made my stomach twist. We were folding laundry together like we always did. He didn't look up when he said it. "You've been quiet lately," he said. "Is there something I should know?" I paused, sock in hand, frozen in place. He wasn't accusing. He was asking.
Gently.
Like he was still giving me the chance to come clean. But I didn't. I couldn't. I just said, "I'm tired. Work's been a lot." He nodded. That was all. And that was almost worse than yelling. I started sleeping in the guest room under the excuse of tossing and turning. He didn't fight it. He didn't follow. He just let me drift. But every time I shut that door, guilt curled beside me like a shadow. The kind you can't turn off or escape. I kept the test in a drawer under the sink, wrapped in tissues. Some nights I'd just sit on the floor of the bathroom and stare at it. Like the lines would change if I stared long enough. They never did. And then came the knock. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was working from home, trying to focus, trying to breathe. And someone knocked, not at the front door, but at the back. The only person who ever used that entrance was him. The man from that night. He stood there in the light like nothing had changed, like he hadn't blown a hole through my entire life. I opened the door, and the moment our eyes met, I knew. I had to tell David. No more silence. No more secrets. Even if it shattered everything. It didn't take long for David to know something was deeply wrong. The day after the man from that night showed up at the back door, I knew I couldn't carry it anymore. Secrets have weight, and mine had gotten too heavy to keep buried. He didn't say anything when I walked into the living room, pale and shaking. He was sitting on the couch with his laptop, working through some blueprint I couldn't begin to understand. But his eyes lifted when he saw me, and I think that moment was when he knew everything was about to change. "David," I whispered. He closed the laptop slowly. "Yeah." My voice broke. "I need to talk to you. And I don't know how." His whole body shifted. Not angry. Not suspicious. Just still. Waiting. Willing to listen, even though he probably already had pieces of the puzzle in his head. Even though I knew what I was about to say could break him. I sat down, but I couldn't look at him. My hands trembled in my lap, and my mouth felt dry. It felt like I was standing on a cliff with no choice but to jump. "There was a night," I began. His jaw clenched just a little. But still, he didn't say anything. It was stupid. It wasn't love. I don't even know why I let it happen. I had too much wine. I felt distant from everything, and I made the worst mistake of my life. The silence that followed was unbearable. When I finally looked up, his face was unreadable. But his eyes. They were red-rimmed, already brimming. "Is it over?" he asked.
Yes.
"It was just that one night. I swear." He stood up and walked across the room. I could tell he was trying to breathe through it. His fingers gripped the edge of the kitchen counter like he needed it to stay standing. Then he turned back. "And the baby?" I froze. "I saw the test in the trash," he said. "2 nights ago." I didn't want to believe it. The floor beneath me disappeared. Tears spilled from my eyes as I nodded, slow and ashamed. "I don't know who the father is. I haven't had the test yet." He closed his eyes and let out a sound that was part sigh, part sob. "Emma, I loved you so much. I still do. But this." He shook his head, unable to finish the thought. I walked toward him, but he held out a hand. Not in anger. In pain. "Please don't. Just give me space." I backed away. I didn't beg. I didn't plead. I knew I didn't deserve it. He slept at his brother's house that night. And I lay alone, curled on the side of the bed that wasn't mine, praying to a God I hadn't spoken to in years, asking for a way back, asking for forgiveness, asking for something I probably didn't deserve. But most of all, I asked for David. Because even if the test came back and proved the child was his, I wasn't sure I could ever fix what I'd broken. It was supposed to be over. The affair, the guilt, the secrecy. I thought all of it ended the day I confessed everything to Daniel. But some stories don't just end. They linger. They echo. They haunt. I had taken the test twice. Once in disbelief, the second time in desperation. Both times, the results stared back at me like a cruel joke. Positive. Pregnant. It had been a month since that night. The night that was supposed to be a moment of weakness, a stupid impulse. Now it had planted a permanent mark on my life. I sat in the bathroom with the third test in my hand, shaking. I didn't know whether to scream or throw up. I told Daniel that same night. I couldn't keep this from him any longer. I'm pregnant, I whispered, my voice breaking. He didn't react at first, just stared at me. Then he asked quietly, "Is it mine?" I wanted to lie. I almost did. But something in me refused to make this worse than it already was. I don't know, I answered truthfully. That night, he slept on the couch. No shouting. No slamming doors. Just a crushing silence that broke me more than any anger ever could. Weeks passed. I went to my first appointment alone. I watched the heartbeat flicker on the screen by myself. The doctor asked if the father would be joining us next time. I didn't have an answer. Daniel kept his distance. He went to work. He came home. He stayed quiet. He cooked dinner, but didn't ask how I was. He folded laundry, but didn't look me in the eyes. We existed in the same house like ghosts. Until one night he finally spoke. "Do you want to keep it?" I paused. "Yes." He nodded. "Then we need to talk about what comes next." We sat at the kitchen table for hours. He asked every question a man has the right to ask. I answered every one. He told me he felt betrayed, humiliated, lost. I told him I felt broken, stupid, and scared. "I loved you," he said. "I still do. But I don't know if I can raise a child that might not be mine." I cried. Not because he was being cruel, but because he was being honest. We decided on a paternity test after the birth. Until then, we'd live in uncertainty. 9 months dragged by. Every kick, every craving, every scan, I went through them knowing the life inside me might destroy what was left of my marriage. When the baby came, he was beautiful. And he looked like Daniel. Same eyes. Same chin. Still, we did the test. And waited. When the envelope came, I held it in my hands for hours. Daniel opened it. He read the paper silently. Then he exhaled. "He's mine," he whispered. Tears poured down my face. He held the baby for the first time without hesitation. There was a new softness in his eyes. Not just love, forgiveness. But forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. Our road ahead would be hard. We would go to therapy. We would rebuild trust. Slowly. Painfully. I'd carry the guilt forever, even as I rocked my son to sleep at night. This is my truth. Not a proud one, but a real one. And if you're still here, thank you. Thank you to my subscribers for believing in these stories and turning pain into purpose. Please turn on your notifications and subscribe if you haven't already. Your support helps bring more powerful, real-life tales to light. Until next time, be careful with the moments you think are small. Sometimes they change everything. That's the end.